Welcome to the Big Six lesson conclusion now that you've taken your pre-assessment, looked over the handout, and watched the video about the Big Six process. So welcome back. I'm still Sabrina Gillow, your librarian who is going to walk you through the Big Six steps in more detail. In the introductory video, you learned what the Big Six process is and why it exists. Now we are going to go in depth with each step and talk about what you do as you move through the Big Six process. We are also going to look at the handout made by me that you can download. This handout will include links and short summaries for each step of the Big Six process. It's like having a Big Six steps process in your pocket. Here we have the lesson handout. First, the handout provides you with a definition of the Big Six. You can see this beside the red arrow, the first one at the top. Next, you have all the tasks summarized for you. You can see each part has been broken down and explained for you. This is signified by the yellow bracket that you see, which encompasses tasks 1 through 6. They include visuals, and some of them also include examples. Third, at the very bottom, signified by the last red arrow, there are 5 additional resources to help you understand the Big Six steps. These resources include worksheets to help you come up with research questions before each step and plan them out, so there are worksheets for the planning process. There are guides with examples for each step if you need help brainstorming those kind of questions or figuring out how to fill out those planning worksheets. And there's an additional video that you can watch, which will take you through each step in detail. So now let's take a look at each of the steps in depth. The Big Six step 1 is task definition. Each one is broken into 2 parts, 1.1, 1.2. The next one will be 2.1 and 2.2 and so on. So task 1.1, define the information. Consider what your assignment or problem is and then answer these questions. What do you need to do? Do you need to explain, inform, persuade, etc.? What is the actual task before you? What are the details of the assignment? Do you understand the requirements in the assignment, or do you need further clarification? This is the part where you stop yourself, go find your teacher, and ask for help. 1.2 asks you to identify information needed. This is where you're going to list the questions you need to answer or the topics that you need to gather information about. This is going to be the foundation for your research. Some example questions could be, if you're doing a research paper about windmills, why are windmills important for renewable energy? How do they work? How much energy do they contribute compared to natural gas, coal power, or solar energy? Some example topics about windmills might be, where are the windmill locations in the United States? What types of windmills do we use in the United States? What is the history of windmills used for energy? What is the windmill energy output, especially compared to things like natural gas, coal power, solar, etc.? And what kind of maintenance goes into windmills? Are they profitable? Things like that. Once you've answered your question, or you've gathered the topics that you need to find information for, now you need to actually look at your information seeking strategies. And this is Big Six Step 2. So 2.1, determine the possible sources. Where is your information going to be? Where can you find information? Consider books, websites, journals, places to find videos, databases, people who can be interviewed or answer questions about it. So what you're thinking about is, where will I find the answers to the questions I asked in the previous slide? 2.2, select the best sources. Once you've identified your sources, you need to figure out which ones are going to be the best for you. Are the sources available to you usable? Can you understand the information in a way that it's presented? If you're looking at a professional journal that's written at a doctorate level, it might be a little bit too advanced. So do you know how to use the database to search for the information you need? Are the books that you're looking at outdated or irrelevant? So are your sources of information usable? Next, we need to actually go find them. 3.1, so Big Six Step 3, location and access. 3.1, locate sources. Figure out where you will find your sources. Are they books on the shelf, articles in a database, digital encyclopedias that you access through the internet? Make notes of where to find them and how to gather them, and start retrieving your information sources. 3.2, find information from the sources. Identify which part of the source will give you the information you need. Check the table of contents, the indexes, website headings, drop-down menus, timestamps and video summaries, etc. Don't flip through a 100-page book or a 200-page book. Check the table of contents. See if there's just a chapter about windmills. Identify which part of the source is relevant for your information need and most likely to house what you want. All right, Big Six Step 4, the use of information. Now that you've identified that these books or websites or encyclopedias or databases have the information you want, and you've identified which part of them has that information, we need to start actually working with the source. So 4.1, engage with it. If it's a book, you need to read it. If it's a video, you need to watch it. If you're seeking out a person, you need to contact them and you need to interview them and get the answers. This is where you're going to actively work with your sources to find the information that you need. 4.2, this is where you're going to extract the relevant information. It's not just enough to read the book, you have to actually pull out the information. So pull out the pieces of information from your sources that are relevant to your assignment or research questions. Make notes about the important information you've identified and mark the bibliographic information, or the source, for each piece of information so that you can keep track and cite it later. Keep your notes organized. Consider categorizing the information as you extract it. So this is just the note-taking part of your information gathering process. Big Six, Step 5, synthesis. Synthesis means putting something together. So 5.1 is going to organize from multiple sources. You have your notes from your book, and you have your notes from your second book, and you have your notes from your database. So what you're going to do is you're going to compare your gathered information and begin organizing it so that they all fit together thematically. This part is like putting together an information puzzle. Which extracts and excerpts go together? How do they relate to each other and then support your information need? If you found 3 different paragraphs in 3 different books about how windmills contribute to the energy grid, how are you going to put those together to structure an argument about it? 5.2, present the information. Determine the method of presentation and begin building it. Do you need to write a paper, create a multimedia presentation such as a PowerPoint, write and practice a verbal report, or something else? Create a rough draft and ensure that your information is organized and presented in a way that makes sense and logically flows from one piece of information to the next. It wouldn't make much sense if you start talking about the purpose and history of windmills at the end of your paper. That probably needs to go first. Big Six, Step 6. This is your last one. This is where you're going to evaluate your work. 6.1 asks you to judge the product, the effectiveness of it. When you look at your product, did you meet the requirements of the assignment? This is where you should look at a rubric if one is provided. Check your project against the requirements to ensure that you have completed each task. If you don't have a rubric, reread the prompt or assignment page to make sure that you've done each part of the assignment in your project. 6.2, judge the process or the efficiency of your work. Go back through the big 6 steps. Have you thoroughly completed each one of the 6 steps? If you don't have a rubric, this may help you ensure that you have met every component of the assignment. Take each step at a time, identify what you did to fulfill the requirements of that step, and ensure that they are part of your project. Review your project and ensure that it is of high quality and that it is complete. Don't submit a rough draft. And that's it. Those are your big 6 steps for research. It takes a very difficult and overwhelming process and breaks it down into manageable steps for each student. Your conclusion? This might sound a little familiar. The Big 6 is your guide for creating comprehensive, thorough research projects. They will provide you with strategies for organizing, gathering, and evaluating information. They will teach you how to identify your information needs, how to address them, and how to present them, and gives you the tools to evaluate your project and determine the quality of your product. Hopefully, looking at these 4 bullet points, you can actually identify which one of the big 6 steps goes to each part of the bullet points. Remember, you have access to the handout and you have access to additional resources as well as this presentation. As you're moving through your research project, make sure to check back here and ensure that you're following each one of the steps. This will help you create a thorough project.